destroyed, either through roasting or through the next stage of brewing. So to think about. Now what's the difference between roasting and brewing? I would say the risk and the financial risk is much higher with roasting than with brewing. If I screw up roasting, if I screw up one batch of roasting, let's say 10 kilo of roasting, which takes about 8 to 12 minutes, I destroyed my financials, so in the area of between 5 to 12,000 pesos. I destroyed the coffee shop owner's financials in the area of 50 to 60,000 pesos. Whilst if roasting is perfected and the next stage screws it up, it may cost me about 30, 40 pesos if one shortage. This is not good, and I figured it out really quickly and recalculated. So that is the difference. The other difference is if in roasting something goes wrong, if I'm not doing properly maintenance and all the other kind of things which we'll speak about a little bit later, that can go into the 100, 200 feet, 400, 5,000 of repair maintenance costs. When you have to get in the technical team from Manila or even from abroad to fix your problem because you didn't take care of the roaster, that can be tremendously expensive. So the risk of a roaster, roasting coffee beans, is significantly higher than anything else in the process of coffee. But equally important for coffee. Next slide, please. Sorry, can we go? Yeah, okay. Well, what does it take to become a good roaster? First of all, it's a very knowledge-based subject. So we have to get the knowledge, do it right, and everything is okay. Let's go to the next slide, please. As a roaster, you need to understand. You need to be very informed about the various processing methods. So your first question to the producer, to the farmer is, how did you do it? What is the processing method you're using? Now, you heard about this during the whole day. We've been talking about, here on the left side is dried beans, here's in honey dried beans. We heard about anaerobic maceration, we heard about anaerobic processes. You need to know that because it defines the tactics of the roasting. You could also destroy the effort of the farmer. Let's take carbonic maceration. Is a part of anaerobic fermentation. The only difference between the two is you put whole beans, including the pulp, into the tanks, add CO2 and ferment it. Both the anaerobic, similar, but the only thing being the little bit pulp score. Basically the same. Enormous process and the outcome enormous complex. Complex sugars, complex flavors, those processes it's not so long ago they have invented that. They use it now in the World Barista Championships, they use it in the Brewing World Championships, because they are ending in better results taste-wise. But you need to know that, because if you do not know that, and you roast anaerobic or carbonic maceration process coffee the same as you wash coffee, then basically destroy it. And we will come to this a little bit later. You also have to know the difference between honey and dry. How do I roast? What's the technique? Why do I have to know that? We'll come to this a little bit later. Next slide. Can we go to the next one? So, it's a little bit intimidating, alright? You don't need to know that. You just should have it heard, probably. But you do as a roaster have to understand, have to know about the composition, the chemical compositions of a green bean to start with. You need to know, and it's not easy to find out, but there are guidelines. What is actually the constituent of a green coffee bean? What is it between Arabica and Robusta? Now in this area here, we are roasting mostly Arabica and a lot Robusta as well. We do need to know what are the differences, and we come later to how do we roast Arabica, how do we roast Robusto, etc. So to think about all the constituents here, caffeine in Arabica, Robusta, Trigonoline, interesting. You don't need to know that unless you are very interested. But all of them are to a large degree decomposed, degraded, changed within the roasting process by applying heat. And then, according to the temperature, you either degrade them more, you either make them to make others more or less. It's all a game. It's a game between heat and temperature, where you degrade usually acids and get other acids or completely decompose it. So, trigonally, total amino acids, carbohydrates, fatty acids, chlorogenic acids, lipids which are fatty, oily things which are responsible for our glycosides, the mineral acids. Then the very interesting part, you can have that if you wish. This slide is the right side on the top. You can't see the numbers again, don't get intimidated, but it shows what's happening within the roasting process in all these constituents. How are carbohydrates decomposed? Which acids are decomposed? Which acids are created? Generally speaking, during the roasting process, all the amino acids, all the acids are decomposed. All the sugars are basically decomposed. Now here comes a spoiler alert. When we talk about sweetness, when we talk about sugar content and all the kind of things in coffee, actually, the roasting process completely decomposes sugar almost to zero. So what we are creating, what the roast creates, is not sugar. Carbohydrates go to zero. What we are creating is perceived sweetness. I come to this a little bit later. Perceived sweetness, I come to this later. I'm not taking it away now. Okay? So the left side here is enormous numbers which we proposed by chemists, showing us that elevations play a huge role in scientifically it's proof. All the not so good elements in coffee, quinic acids, acetic acids, which contribute to bitterness, to the things, they are increasing as a compound constituent in the green tea. They're increasing as lower we go. Higher elevations have less of those compounds than lower elevations. We do have to understand that. We know that. We know it in caffeine, sure, but not so obvious in others. That's proven. So we do have to know the elevation. Of course, we have to know the elevation also for other reasons. Okay, next slide. So, again, knowledge, know-how, understanding, experience. What is our really how is it built? I think most of you do know being the layers of the coffee being look like pops, multi-large parchment, etc. But on the right side, you can see each of them, what kind of role they play and how they influence the roasting result. So as an example, the skin and the pulp, we know it affects flavor in the roasted bean, in the outside. Honey process, a natural process, anaerobic process, carbonic maceration produce a higher perceived sweetness than others. We have to know that. We have to take this into consideration when we roast, and we come to this in another slide. So here, pectin layers, not so much pectin layer, yes, it's multi-large parchment, the silver skin will get roasted eventually as chaff. Okay? But you need ventilation. Chaff needs to go out. If you don't get the chaff out of the system, it stays in the drum. It literally burns, and we don't want burned substances in there, which impact those are readings which then get this smoky flavor, ashy flavor, something which you don't want in the roast. So, next slide please. Right.
one.
We heard that before.
Tangan ako.
The varieties, the geographics, the densities that comes usually with geographics, with the location, and climate change, and many more, they need to be considered when we roast. We have to have information about that before we roast, so we can avoid these things down the line, which are irreversible. And these things are irreversible. So this map shows you a little bit the world of coffee with our distinctions, there the Excelsior, the Robusta, where they grow. Each of those are different. Each of them different densities, different sugar contents, different acidity levels. Every one of them is different. Just as a cycle, since 2015, we started for we had our first shop roast in the shop, that was new in the region. And since then, 10 years now down the line, we roasted, I just did this homework a couple of days earlier because I have a lot of all these. We roasted about 10,000 batches. 10,000 batches. Which translates, and that's the number which I really had to read up in several times because it was quite mind-blowing, which into about 5.5 million coffee trees. We roasted coffee, which translated to 5.5 million coffee trees. It's actually a really insane number. I checked many times, it's true. So, that said, we have roasted all the varieties. So Excelsior, and a lot of the subcategories, not all of them, but a lot. So the database we have is huge. In every pro roaster will accumulate over his time 700, 800, 900, 1,000 and more roasting profiles. All are different. They are really different. It's amazing. Even if you get 5 sacks of Mountain Apple coffee from Marie, from Johnny, from others, every sack is kind of a little bit different. Yeah? Okay? So, next slide please. Good. That's the easy part, but an important part. Not so easy really, but you need to understand. Choose your right. If you want to become a roaster, the first question is, what is your target client? Who is it served? Are those coffee shops in the town? High-end coffee shops? Are those coffee shops in the provinces? Are those somewhere in the middle? Are those coffee shops to serve all beverages which you have heard before? Espresso, good coffee, etc. You need to understand it because that's the basic question to ask yourself when you choose your equipment. The next thing is you do have to have certain tools in order to check your roast. You cannot roast without a tool that shows you how much is the temperature of the bean, how it's developing, how is the alcohol, etc. Of course you can, but it's not effective. It's not effective when you are going to high-end clients. It's not effective in order to be consistent at all. It's like flying blind. Yeah, you may eventually reach B, but maybe not the very next. So it is essential you have that setup for professional roasting facility has to have certain investment. Just guide you a little bit through how much those things cost as well. Next slide, please. The first critical question, do I need a drum roaster or do I need an air roaster? Those are basically the two main categories. The fluid bed roaster, air roaster, almost the same. Very small distinctions. That's for the same, just it's the same. But both are very different involved in how they roast the output. So I would say here in this region, if you roast here, much better off if you go with the drum roaster because the clientele, everything what you have, who you serve, and again, you will see this a little bit down the road now. you will need a drum roaster. You can roast much deeper. Convection, reduction, heat transfer, and etc. The air roaster are suitable for coffee shops who really are in the high end of good coffee, let's say. Because they bring out acidity, but they are not as good at bringing body and mouthfeel. There is no conduction in that. And conduction is kind of interesting and important. So, sample roasters, home roasters, home roasters, and a couple of others do the job good. And there is an ongoing debate between those two roasters. Okay? It's just what it is. But in general, someone here in this area, you're much better off with that one. Second, what you have to take into consideration, if you have brownouts, if you have this in outer regions of brownouts, which I've experienced quite a lot, you have an air roaster, you have a drum roaster that runs with gas, therefore electricity. You are a little bit more open to issues. Okay, you can use generators for both, but you know what I mean. Okay, so next one, please. Without the distoner, sorry for the pictures, not really liking a distoner, you need this as an equipment as well. The distoner just, as the word says, it distones the coffee beans, it protects, especially the next stage when you put coffee beans in your grinder, like stones in there, your grinder universe are dead. Not good for the marketing, it's just an essential tool as well. So next slide please. Coming back to what I originally said, the origin of roasting, it's a chemical process, it's the plain heat temperature. You have to understand the language and some of the most important processes in this field. There is no way as a professional roaster that you think, okay, I'll do a little bit, get a little bit research on YouTube, very little about roasting. But you know, I see the drum, I heat it up, and maybe I fill it up and see that that's enough. Maybe I install artisan, which is freely available, and that does the job. No, it's not that. Of course, you need to know because it's a chemical process. Roasting is a chemical process. So you need to understand what's going on in order to understand how you can influence what you actually want. And we talked about you can easily screw up process because you didn't know it. You thought it's a wash because your tactics in roasting, the application of heat and the application of temperature is different. Temperature time is different to all those should be different. So, without going into the details, just to mention it, the most important of those are the layer reaction because you have it everywhere. If you toast the bread and it gets brown, the browning process of any food